Next, I'd like to tell you about the model-based templating capabilities in Simplicity. In Simplicity, instead of having to build a different point for every measurement that you want to retrieve, you can combine and encapsulate a set of measurements that belong to a particular asset and create a hierarchy of those assets to not only help organize your points, but also to enable you to quickly and easily stamp out instances of different assets with different parameters, but using the same general template. So for example, in this project, we have 3 classes: a work cell, a machining center, and a spindle assembly. If you look at the work cell, you'll see that it is a hierarchy of machines, multiple machines, each with a spindle. So you can create a hierarchy representing your assets, and then on a given asset, you can define a number of different templated values that will be used to create instances. So for example, you can set parameters called attributes that can be used to give uniqueness to each instance. You can define the measurements or data items that this particular machining center will use, and you can set up all the same things that you can set up for a point in Simplicity, which will then eventually translate into an actual point. Events, actions, and scripts can all be encapsulated and reused as you create instances. For example, we have 3 different areas, and under each we have 3 different machines. So those are created by going ahead and saying new. For example, if I wanted a new work cell and I wanted it to be based on the work cell class, you could then give unique values that are unique to new work cell versus shaft or piston or rotor machining work cell. And then as you create that, so you can say which ones are required or not. As you create that, it will auto create a whole set of points that have been configured in the template of that class. So now if I go and look at the point list, you will see this new machining work cell, and you can see that it auto created all of those points for you based on that template. If you want to make a change that will cascade to all of the work cells or all of the machines, you simply have to go into the particular class and go ahead and make a change. So for example, if I wanted to change the coolant level and wanted to change the alarm message, whatever that is an example, and then I hit OK, and as I make that change, you can see that it's used by 12 other objects. So all of those will be updated with that change. So it's a very powerful way to make changes that cross similar kinds of assets that you define as a class. Another powerful feature is the ability to associate a graphic that you build that is bound to the different attributes and data items of this class, such that you can drag that graphic onto the screen, or drag an instance of this class onto the screen, and it will auto associate that with a graphic. This becomes very powerful when you're building screens, to be able to build screens once and use the context of the model multiple times. So for example, if I were to edit this screen, you can see that screens have the ability to have parameters, and we can give, for example, the object name as a context parameter for this screen, and then build all of our graphics off of this parameter, such that this same screen can be used for multiple different instances in that model. So for example, if I start up that screen and I go down to a motor, you can see that this same screen can be used for more than one machine. If I go to machine 2, it switches to the machine 2 context and gives the values for that. Machine 3, it switches to that. If I switch to a different area, machine 2, it switches to that area. So same screen, using model templating, you can set the context to a screen and have all the graphics shift over and pick up values from that context. Similarly, I've set this up so that as I switch context, it also filters the alarms based on a custom alarm attribute that is tied to that same object variable context in the screen, allowing me to see only the alarms that belong to shaft machining work cell machine 1. So very powerful templating concepts in Simplicity. Finally, Simplicity supports library objects. So you can create a library screen like this one and define a template for a graphic, just like you can for model context. So this graphic is a group object. If I open that group and look at how this it is built not based on a specific measurement, but based on an object or a parameter. That allows me to then reuse that object in different screens, but maintaining a link to that central library object so that when I make changes, it automatically picks that up. So for example, if I edit my header screen, this is a template header that I use on all my screens. So if I were to, for example, edit this screen, this template, and move this graphic down below and the words above, and save that. Now, when I go to open any of the screens, that change has been propagated across all the screens, so that I only have to change graphics once that are common.